Welcome to Hanging by a Thin Thread, a podcast about all thready things, including knitting, crochet, sewing, weaving, and spinning. I'm Shelley from Kansas City, and this is my dog Walter. He's kind of half asleep this morning still, but I wanted to welcome you to our podcast. And you will notice I am wearing the Carbeth. It's finished. Ta-da! I've been working on this. I started it on January 29th and finished it on April 29th. So it was a 3-month journey. And if you count the fact that I originally got this fiber at a fiber show at the Missouri town 3 years ago. So it actually, I spun the fiber, but I actually washed and cleaned it first. I bought it right off the sheep. And so it was a process. I first had to prep the fiber, then spin it. Then I decided to dye it this crimson color using the Jacquard acid dye. And I did that last summer. And then starting it this year with the knitting. The first 2 months I was just working on, knitting from the ribbing up to the 11 inches or so, up to the underarm. I actually ended up, I think, with a total of 12 inches total, including the ribbing. But I was knitting on that and doing the sleeves for the first 2 months because you knit each of the sleeves separately. And I was doing that on my Flexi Flip needles. So then when I got to that 2-month mark and I was ready to start on the yoke, there's what I call a unifying row. And so I was getting ready to do that, but I was upset by the hem flipping problem. And I was also put off and a little bit concerned about doing the unifying row because I really didn't have a concept of how that would work out. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. But first I want to tell you about the hem flipping. I discussed that in my last video and asked you guys if you had any ideas of how to fix it. And so no one offered any ideas. So I went over to Yarn Barn to celebrate Carolyn's birthday, my friend Carolyn. We were together on a little shopping trip over there. And lo and behold, I brought the sweater with me in my knitting bag to ask the clerk. And I asked the clerk, they had a couple of ideas, but, they were basically to pick up on the bottom of the ribbing, knit a little bit more ribbing, and then tuck it under and sew it down on the back side, or to add elastic thread to try to cinch up the ribbing. That was the ideas that I got at that point. And then I'm shopping, and lo and behold, I look up and see Patty Lyons, the well-known knitting teacher and designer, and the one who wrote this book, the Patty Lyons Knitting Bag of Tricks, over 70 sanity-saving hacks for better knitting. I had been recommending this book to you guys, and I had, mentioned it before. I've been reading it. I didn't know or didn't realize that this was the weekend that she was giving some classes there at Yarn Barn. And so when I saw her, I waited till she finished shopping and checking out. Then I went up to her, introduced myself, and told her about the fact I'd taken an online class with her before and loved her book. So I mentioned that I had this problem with my current knitting project with the flipping hem. And I said, do you happen to have any quick suggestion you could give me to fix this? And she said, wait a minute, I'm on a break right now from class. Let's go up to the front of the store and I can briefly show you. I just have a minute or two that I can show you. So we went to the front, laid out the sweater, and she showed me that the way to fix it was, since it was a bottom-up construction, we could just snip that edge stitch, and then she slowly unpicked 4 stitches to get me started. And then we put those stitches on a stitch holder. But she was showing me how to go about doing it on my own. And so it was wonderful. I immediately got the hang of it. It was, really easy the way she showed me and told me how to do it. So I am so grateful to Patty Lyons. She is an amazing teacher and very kind person. So I really appreciate her. And I love her book. I went at that point, I decided also I wanted to buy her workbook because although I've read this book before, I really didn't work through the exercises like she suggests you do. And the very way that I was able to fix this sweater with her method just goes to show there's so many tricks and tips in there that I didn't fully capture while just reading it. So I think doing the exercises is a really good idea, and I'll be doing that in the future. But getting back to, so that inspired me after I figured out the ribbing problem. I was up to the unifying row, and that was what I started on the week of the WIP. I did a WIP week where I really was wanting to whip my WIPs into shape because I had several projects that were at a standstill or I didn't know what to do with. And I was kind of just at a, I'd lost my knitting mojo for a little while there. So I used this WIP week that I did a few weeks ago, at the week of April 7th, to get back on track with all my projects. And I'm going to be telling you about that here in just a few minutes. So please stick around for that. I think it might inspire you to get to moving on some WIPs of your own. But anyway, so then I was up to this part here, what I call the unifying row. And the way that works, it's a very unique construction, at least for me. I'd never done this before. What you're doing is you have your knit stitches here on the front panel. You knit those across, and then you pull the sleeve that you knit independently. You have your stitches there on a lifeline. And in my case, I had them on flexi flips because that's what I knit them on. And so you literally knit these sleeves from this going around the top of the sleeve. You leave the underarm unknit, and that's how you're able to do this because you later graft the underarm stitches. Then you go around the back, knitting those stitches, and then you add the second sleeve, picking up and again knitting across the top of your arm. Then you go about and finish knitting this last panel, the last stitches here. So that is what I call the unifying row. Now, it sounds easy once you get your head around it, but it actually was really tight knitting on my hand. I have an arthritic right hand here. No, it's not my wrist, it's my hand. And so it really caused a lot of pain with that. And I had to actually knit one row per night for a few nights because it was, very uncomfortable knitting those first few rows. But once I got it all together, the yoke was a slow slog. You are not only knitting the yoke itself, but you're doing these decreases. They're kind of like staggered diagonal decreases. And on the back, you're knitting a V up toward the neck. So you're knitting them on both sides on the back. Anyway, that was a very slow slog for me. And I know you have to be very careful when you're doing those because you need stitch markers to keep them in place. I used these safety pin stitch markers to make sure I was decreasing in the right place. And that's really essential. And also to keep counting your stitches so that you do end up with, with your decreases lining up. But another ironic thing about the Patty Lyons thing is that many years ago when Shayne of MDK Knitting, she has a regular blog she puts out, and she's also a knitting teacher. But anyway, she had made the Carbeth many years ago, back in 2018, when they were doing a lot of knit-alongs. And she posted this blog post about the fact that she was having trouble with these these decreases that go along. And so she talks about the fact that Patty Lyons has a better method of doing the SSKs and the left-leaning decreases that make those decreases much more attractive to match the knitting two together. So what I'm saying is Patty Lyons is really the go-to person for these type of techniques to knit better and to make your project turn out looking better. I don't know that I did the best job, to be honest. I don't think I did it the way that you normally do. I didn't read this thing about Shayne until recommending Patty Lyons' method until after I had gotten too far into the yoke to make a change. But my decreases are not really neatly done, and to be honest, they're not quite I did them correctly. I stayed with the stitch markers, but they're kind of looking, they're just not looking as good as they could on my sweater. And they're, anyway, I'm just not totally thrilled with them. But if I were to make this sweater again in the future, and I don't know that I will, I certainly won't for a little while, but if I ever were to make another one, I could see myself making a gold one, similar to the one that Kate Davies has on the front of her pattern. I could see myself making a gold one and maybe a little bit more cropped with wooden buttons. I think would look really sharp. So who knows? Sometime in the future, I might do it again. And now that I've gone through it once, I think I'd have a better concept of how to do it. But before I leave the topic, I want to show you, talk about the yarn I used and how much yarn. This is my hand spun, and it's kind of a purpley 2-ply BFL mix, and it's kind of a purpley red color. I combined it with the Diablo, the Hobie Diablo, which is an acrylic mohair. It's not real mohair, but it's very affordable, and each one of these is 246 yards. So I used 3 full skeins of this, and then I had 1 partial skein left, a little bit of 1 skein left. So anyway, I used, as I figure it out, about 800 or 850 yards of yarn on each of these, because I carried them together. So that's what I used. I was surprised that I only used that much yarn. I thought it would be more, but that is what I used. So I made the size 4, the extra large. And again, I think this is going to be a very wearable sweater. In fact, I'm going to wear it later this morning. We're going to the opening of the farmer's market near my house. And it's a chilly morning. It's supposed to warm up later, but this morning is pretty chilly. So I'm going to wear this sweater to this first venture out at the farmer's market. Now, I'm going to turn you over to the me of 3 weeks ago when I was still stuck on all my projects and I had just finished my WIP week. I was getting unstuck by doing the WIP week. So tune in if you would and hear all about it. I look forward to hearing about your WIPs and let me know what you're working on for spring. I'm really glad I did this WIP week. It helped me refocus because I had put aside several projects simply out of being stuck on them. And so being able to refocus was huge. And also, most importantly, the Monday through Friday, even though I didn't accomplish a huge amount each evening, and there were many obstacles along the way, I was able to build and keep momentum. So I did just enough during those work week nights that I was able to get excited again about these projects that I had put aside for so long. And so I just wanted to, before we show you the projects and my progress, I want to just quickly recap what I had happening each of the days, or what I had happening that were obstacles that came up during the week. We were doing our taxes. I didn't do the taxes, Bob did them, but I was providing input and emotional support and trying to give him ideas of document location and that kind of stuff during that time. So we had our taxes to worry about. We also were going to get our passports filed. And so once again, we were gathering documents and getting me to the post office and, all the stuff you have to do for a passport, because I didn't have one. So then, my mom had a doctor's appointment. I had to go pick her up. She had an evening here and, go to her doctor appointment. And then I had a lot of work interference. A couple of evenings I was doing work that spilled over into my evening. So that shortchanged my evening. And then, on Monday, I forgot to mention, we had a plumbing mishap. We had our kitchen sink leaking water all over the kitchen floor. And so all of those things happened during this work week. So the point of that is to let you know and remind you that even in the face of obstacles, I learned I can still make really good progress and just move on if I am motivated. So this was a very motivating week. Now let me show you what we accomplished. First off, the Carbeth sweater. This cardigan, I was able to get most importantly, to get the sleeves attached to the body. And I have done beyond that 5 rows. So I'm now at the point of getting ready to do the decreases that will shape the yoke. So I'm at a good point of moving forward, and I'm really, really excited about it. These were 5 really long, tedious rows. I will tell you, those weren't fun rows, and I ended up kind of having my hand ache. I have a brace that I use sometimes, and I usually sleep with it at night. But I'm thinking I need to start wearing this as I'm working on, projects like this that strain my wrist. Now, the next most important thing I'm really excited about, I wanted to, remember the Franny Granny poncho was at the point where I just had the squares unsewn, and I had not, gotten it together to make the yoke. So I did that, and beyond that, I have now completed 8 rows of the poncho. So I'm well on my way to working on this poncho, and it's at a very doable, mindless time where I can really get some progress on it. I'm using this mandala, yarn, the worsted weight. So it's going very well. I'm really excited about it. The socks I wanted to work on also made some good progress. And when I started the week, I was at that little orange part, the orange line, that's right up here, and I managed to do all of these, which is a total of 26 rows beyond that line. So 26 rows of ribbing to progress the sock, and I did get through the striping also. So I'm all ready to make some real headway on the socks as well. And now I'm going to show you in just a moment, the last project I made headway on was my loom, my weaving. But before I do that, I will show you something I did not do that I was hoping I would get some fabric for this so that I could eventually turn this into a pillow. But I did not get to that at all. I didn't get to any fabric stores, and I did not work on that. But hopefully sometime this week I will have a chance. Now I'm going to shift into the next room where we can show you the weaving progress. Well, we're back in the loom room for just a brief recap on the progress with the waffle weave towels. I did finish threading all of these threads here for the towels. And on top of that, I did an important thing. I went over and started on the heddles. And I'm going to swing around. Bob's going to swing around with me. We didn't get a lot accomplished, but we've done the first round, the first of 20 repeats with the heddles. So the thread is now through these. This will set up and make the patterning. So that's what I'll be doing. And I have, like I said, a total of 20 repeats of what I just did here. So this is going to take a little while to do, but hopefully now that I've gotten started on it, I'll be motivated to work on that regularly. And that is a big, big accomplishment because these towels have been sitting idle for 2 months now. I'm very happy about this. Probably happier about this than anything else I've done this week. Yes. Now I just want to give a really quick wrap up and tell you some things that I have figured out during this week-long whip-along. First of all, I think the prep is very important. It was on last Sunday when I did most of my day I spent prepping for this and planning this whip-along. And so what I did was prep the food. I knew what we were going to eat every night for dinner. And I did some grocery shopping to be sure I had all the food that I needed for that. I prepped materials that I would need to be working on. I made sure I had enough of the mandala yarn, and I ended up having to go buy one more skein of it from Joanne to make sure I had enough for the Franny Granny. So any materials that you need, making sure you have them, making sure you have the right needles, the right hooks, whatever it is that you need in the way of materials is very important. Another thing that you don't think much about is the lighting. I found that since I was doing this in the evening, one of the things that holds me up a lot, or where I make errors, is if I have poor lighting, I can make mistakes that have to be redone. So I made sure that both in my living room and in my loom room that you were just in, that I had really good lighting so that I could see what I was doing. Because we're at the daylight savings time, I did get the benefit of having a little bit of light in the early evening. But because I had several obstacles, like we talked about, it made it a little later in the evening sometimes before I could get started. So the lighting is really important. Very, very important is to have your music, your podcasts, your YouTube selections, your favorite TV shows. White Lotus and my audiobooks got me through a lot of things this week that helped me keep going and built my momentum. And most importantly, you need your plans. You need to know which projects you're going to be working on, what you want, and I didn't get everything done, as we talked about. I didn't get to this. But I worked on all the other 4 projects that I had planned on. I did a little bit on each one. So in your planning process, you need to decide, first of all, what days you're going to be doing it on. Are you going to be doing it Monday through Friday evening like I did, or is your schedule different? Perhaps you work from home. Perhaps you have small children at home, and so you may want to do it differently. You may want to have a weekend whip along where you only do it on the weekends. Whatever it is you do, make your plan. Decide in the plan what projects you're going to be working on and get them all laid out along with your materials. And I even planned where I was going to work on them. If I could, before I left in the morning, have my project sitting in the space I was going to be working on it. Like the Carbeth, it was often in the hearth room here where I have the fire, because I'd be watching White Lotus. And so that was just, it's not a very, very portable project, so it was helpful to have it in the living room ready to go. And then my socks, I took them on the go a lot. I often knit them in bed in the early morning. So having a place where you're going to work on and planning that too is helpful. The most important thing, I think, in planning is that you decide, are you going to have a focused WIP week where you work on just one project, like maybe the Carbeth might have been something I could have done, is only work on the Carbeth, since that was a big project hump I wanted to get past. Or you could do what I do, which I did, which is called the layered approach. I call it that. That's my new name for it. Just like building a lasagna, I worked in layers. So I did a little bit on a couple of things each day. And that worked really well for me. But you decide what works best for you and what would be best for the projects that you have in your WIP pile that you'll be working on. I hope this has been helpful. If any of you would like to continue watching me on my regular podcast episodes, I would love to see you there. But in the meanwhile, let me know what WIPs you are working on, what you found helpful about this video. Any comments or hitting the like button will be very helpful in growing our channel. Thank you. It's been a wonderful WIP along, and I appreciate you joining me. Till next time, bye everybody.